Hello everyone, this is Jason Decristofaro, your instructor for MUS 112 Intro to Jazz. And in this week's module, Module 11, we begin to talk about modal jazz, which was a pretty significant development in jazz music, which Miles Davis really helped to signal. Now, modes are essentially groups of notes which have different sounds. In many ways they're similar to a musical scale, but there's a difference in modes in that each mode has a very distinctive sound that's not necessarily happy or sad, but a little more ambiguous, a little more mysterious, if you will. So to better understand this, I'm going to go ahead and just play a couple of scales that we hear very commonly in most Western music. And the first one is what we call a major scale. This is what a major scale sounds like. The emotion which is often attributed to this scale is happy or joyous. And you can hear that in the sound of the scale. Now, by contrast, we have what we call a minor scale, which is a sadder sounding scale, which sounds like this. So you can really hear the difference between those two scales when I play them back to back. First, the major scale. And then the minor scale. Most music we listen to, even in jazz, is based around these two scales. And once again, this is from the European tradition, which jazz music is based upon, going all the way back to the 1600s and the Baroque period in Western Europe. But Miles Davis began to use new collections of pitches known as modes, and they're not quite as black and white as the happy, sad dichotomy of major and minor scales. And one mode he used in particular is this one I'm about to play for you. It's called the Dorian Mode, and it sounds like this. Now, it sounds a lot like that minor scale, but there's one note in the Dorian scale which is a little different, or sorry, the Dorian Mode. Take a listen. So there's one note in that scale which is a little unusual sounding. If I play the tonic or foundational chord of this scale and then add that one special note that makes it Dorian, we get this very mysterious, sort of ambiguous sound which gives the music just enough color and a sense of new direction. Now, Miles Davis used this mode on the song So What? Everything you just heard is based on this 7-note mode. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to the first note. And one thing you may notice when you listen to these chords, which act as a response to the melody, they don't really sound happy or sad. Once again, they have that mysterious, sort of ambiguous quality to them. We hear this very distinctive call, and this is going back to call and response from Module 2, when the bass plays this melody, and the response are these mysterious, ambiguous sounding chords. One of the most significant things about modal jazz was that Miles limited his musicians to only using these notes. Now Now they could play these notes in different registers of their instruments. For example, lower. They could also do different combinations. They didn't have to just run up the mode in a linear fashion like this. They could also do sequences and melodic ideas, but they could only use that collection of pitches. And we see a similar tradition today when we listen to jam bands, for example, where they'll often just play over two chords and use the same mode or scale. And it's worth noting that unlike bebop music, which used several changing chords every measure, think back to Blues for Alice or the Bird Blues, where we have all those different chords in the course of 5 bars, and compare that to something that repeats, something that has a lot of space, something that allows more room for the soloist to breathe, and instead of worrying about making all the chord changes or making sure that what they play fits the constantly changing chords underneath, allows the soloist instead space to breathe and react, and perhaps more importantly, focus on the melody rather than the underlying chord.